Hello, class. Professor Strike here. Of course, we're going to miss Tuesday because of the ACT. But on on Thursday, not only is your paper due and your assignments about the soda tax and the single solution to world poverty are due, we're also going to introduce a new paper, and that paper contains research. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a great site that will really show you how to cite your research. And I will be covering a lot of that. I'll try to cover some of that in class too, but I wanted to make sure that I recorded this because I wanted you to have it as a resource. So let me just get to sharing my screen here. Make sure I share the right thing. Oops, what have I done here? Okay, here we are. So, MLA Guide to Formatting and Style. Now, it gives you a link to the citation machine here, and I will post the link to the page we're looking at in the course. It gives you a link to the citation machine. That is a useful site if and only if you use it the right way. And what do I mean by the right way? If you enter all the stuff manually, it almost always gets it wrong when you just enter the web address. But and so you need to be very careful. It can help you if you understand how MLA works. It can make it quicker. If you don't, it can just get you in trouble. Now, some of the databases in the library will actually do an MLA citation for you. Even then, you need to know what is correct, because the way those work is basically somebody went through in a database and entered all the different fields, and then the computer just sweeps it up and makes the citation. And sometimes they enter them wrong. Or, for example, the capitalization rules are different in different types of writing styles. And if the article wasn't written in MLA format, it might, let's say it was written in APA, American Psychological Association format, it'll have that capitalization. So you'll still have things you need to fix. So in APA, you only capitalize the first word of the title. In MLA, you capitalize the first letter of every word except for A and the, in other words, articles. So if you took English in if you took an English class where you cited anything in middle school, or you had a teacher who was using out-of-date curriculum, you would have learned that there was a different format for every type of source. One for newspapers, one for magazines, one for journals, one for books, one for websites, and so on and so forth. That is no longer true. That is no longer a true statement. Now, today, what we have is one format fits all. It will always be this way. Your first thing that you will have is the author. And there's an example there. Anything with his last name, comma, first name, and middle initial or name if it's given. If there are more authors, you will list them after that, but only the first author is last name, first name. And I will go, in class, I will go into some more detail about how to do that, but always go with the author first is what you need to know for today. And never change the list of authors in a source. They're given in the order they're given, usually for a reason. And usually the first author is most prestigious. Now, sometimes they're just in alphabetical order or something, but if everybody works on it equally. If you have four or more authors, you'll write the first author's name and then ET and space AL, and that should be italicized, et al. And that means and others. This is important because a lot of science papers have hundreds of authors, because for science, authorship means something different. It means that a person worked on the research. They might have had nothing to do with the actual writing of the paper, but authorship is having anything to do with working on the research. A lot of people have been confused because you'll find a paper that's 2 pages long and has half a page of authors, and that's how that happens. So the next thing is the title of the source. That could be the book. It would just be the book in italics. If it's an article or an individual page on a website or an individual news article, the title should be in quotation marks. And then the name of the website or the magazine that it's in or the newspaper it's in should be italicized. And that's the container. So, for example, if you come up with a news article on the Associated Press's website, then the title of the article would be in quotes, and then Associated Press would be in italics. Now, next would be other contributors. Now, most sources won't have this, but a good example is if you have something that's translated. This thing by Michel Foucault, this book, is written in French, and it was translated by Richard Howard. And that's especially important with books that are very well known because there could be multiple translations, and some may be better than others. And or if it's a special edition, such as an annotated edition or with an editor, special editor, or if there's anything else, for example, an editor for an anthology. So if you have a book with like the Prentice Hall Reader, you would have the author of the story you wrote, the name of the story in quotation, Prentice Hall Reader in italics, and then I believe it's Peter Miller, maybe the author, the editor of the book would be next. I started recording this and I realized I don't have the Prentice Hall Reader with me, but the man whose last name is Miller, who's on the book, would be after the Prentice Hall Reader in italics. So his name wouldn't be in italics, but he would be listed as the editor. Gives different versions. The Bible, for example, authorized King James Version. That would to clarify what you're quoting. If you and what edition. Now you might ask, well, if you're using a King James Bible, why does it matter? I mean, the Oxford University Press didn't publish the original King James. Well, if you cite something on the page, you probably have a book and a verse also cited, but if you cite something on the page with a page number, you're going to want to know, what Bible you have, because I bet for every one of you who has a King James Bible that isn't exactly the same from exactly the same printer, I would bet you the page numbers are different. There's no formal formatting for that. You remember the Bible was written on scrolls, didn't have pages at the time it was written, and books like we think of that are bound hadn't really been invented yet. And so that's kind of arbitrary what page it's on, but important if you're trying to find it. So, Prentice Hall Reader 11th edition, or in this case, Ancient Rhetoric for Contemporary Students 3rd edition. That is the edition of the, you need to make clear what edition. The next would be the publisher. Looking back at some of these other sources, it could be, in one of these cases, it's NBC News. In another, and if you notice, there's also the data publication. And for this show, for example, Parks and Recreation, it's the episode, the title, and it's not, but it was done by NBC, but it also has Netflix listed because that's where it was watched. I don't think I'll be citing TV shows for this, So if there's a volume number, season number of the TV show, a magazine might have a volume number, issue number. That would be the next thing. The next thing after that is the publisher, whoever published it. That could be a museum that presented something. That's unlikely it'll be used. But if you look at all of these, they each have, and any of these on here, they all will have some sort of publisher to put it out there. You have the date of publication. If you notice, one of these just has 1999. One of these has 14 December 1999. If you are wondering how to determine that, it's pretty simple. You can only give the amount of information they give you. You might not even have a date if it's not given. Most sources will have it somewhere, though. And 1999, if that's all it's given, that's what you put. If the full date, you put it just like it's formatted here. If you're using a website, it will often have like the copyright date at the bottom, and that's what you use, or a date of last update, and that's what you would use. Location. It could be a web address. It could be page numbers. Could be a physical location if it's a museum piece, but where I can find it. Now, if you had an outdated English class, English textbook, it might have told you to list the city of publication. That's no longer required for publishers. Used to be. I will talk a little more about that in class. Some other elements. You can put the date of original publication before the press and the last after. That's not required. I wouldn't unless there's, unless you have some burning reason to. City of publication, you can put it. It's not really required. You can, but it's not required anymore. That comes back from the day when if you wanted to find the press to get a copy, the only way you could find out to get it from a press is to write the press or to call the press. But to do that, you'd have to call a number for information, a phone number for information. And the first thing they would ask when you picked that up was city and state. And if you didn't know the city and state, you were out of luck. So that's what that comes from, but old habits die hard and didn't go away. Finally, date of access. Now, if you're citing a paper publication, in that case, you do not need a date of access because, I guarantee your Prentice Hall Reader text has not changed since they were purchased. Somebody might have blotted something out or something, but the actual formal text has not changed. But websites can. And so that's very important. It's also important because if I find somebody's not there, I can look to see if it's a place that deletes stuff quickly. Web addresses are not always required. And I'll explain in class the difference between a static URL and a regular URL. Basically, a static URL is one that if you put it there, it will take me to the site. The other ones, and a lot of the databases do it, if I were to click on the web address without going through the search engine, I wouldn't come up with anything. Some things, and there's an example here, have a digital object identifier. Those are very, very, very rare. But it would go in the end if it lists a DOI, or digital object identifier. Now, in text, remember that everything on your works cited page needs to be cited in text. Everything cited in text needs to be on the works cited page. So I call works cited. They're cited in the source. So in this case, cites a quote from Edward Said, parentheses at the end, it says Said 9. Now, Said, if he mentions his name in it, then you just need 9. You would have to put his name if you're using a source that does not have page numbers, just to make it clear that there's a citation there. And it gives a works cited entry. There's multiple authors, you list their last names. So if it was Sayed, Johnson, and Smith, you would have Sayed, comma, Johnson, comma, and Smith. And for that, you will use et al. That is more complicated, though, and I will talk about that a little more in class. So I just wanted to kind of introduce you to this because once I go over this, I don't know how far we will get with this in class, and once I go over this, the most important thing, because I'm definitely going to focus on this next Tuesday, is that you need to make sure that you have, you need to make sure that you have down all the information. So I'm going to give you this URL. I'm more worried about that than your formatting. In fact, that is because if you find a source and don't get that information, you won't be able to use it. And so always make sure you're using MLA8. I'm going to take you to something real quick before we go. This is a link to the citation machine, and I'm going to go. Well, it won't take me there. Try it this way. Can't type, can I? Now, if you go to the citation machine, start from scratch. It'll ask you what kind of format you're doing. Let's say it's a book. I would enter it manually. And it will ask for all the information we talked about. If you're citing the whole book, or a chapter, or the preface or introduction, the author's name, and you can add more authors or contributors. So it'll give you all of that. Again, it's only as accurate as the information you put in. And it will complete that citation. It's very useful, but it's only as good as the information you put in it. Anyhow, let's see, trying to give some advertisements, trying to get to stop sharing. So again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to email me. Right now, I just want this out there, the information that you need in your source, so that if you start looking for sources when I go over the next paper topic on Thursday, that you have all the information you need. I will cover this more. If for some reason, I've heard there's been more coronavirus cases, it's got high, for some reason we get canceled, then in that case, I will record some more videos, some much more specific videos than this general overview, when I can actually go to a classroom and record it instead of being upstairs. My wife is teaching a class online on Zoom downstairs, and so I'm up here teaching this, and don't have a whiteboard. I don't have a lot of my stuff. I have a laptop balanced on the dresser, and this is something that you're not going to have a whole lot of research for this, but you will for the main research paper. So this is kind of a practice one. So again, if you have a question, feel free to email me. Remember that there's also some tutorial videos and a lot more on the Purdue Writing Lab site. Just always make sure you're looking at MLA, or if it specifies MLA8. Thank you and have a wonderful day, and I will see you in class on Thursday. I expect you to have your papers ready to turn in then. You should have your rough draft with them, have your draft clearly labeled, final draft on top, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Bye.